Hey loves, welcome or welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, my name is Faith, and today guys, I'll be checking out Daily Wire host react to Ontario ruling on Jordan Peterson. And you guys, I'm super excited for this. If you're yet to subscribe to this channel, please consider subscribing. Give this video a massive thumbs up, and without much ado, let's jump right into this video.
A pal of ours, colleague of ours,
Yes.
is being threatened by Canada, America's evil top hat.
This is Jordan's fault for being Canadian.
Yes, yeah, yes.
I never heard that before. That's the first thing you said I loved.
Thank you. No, I had a pun in that video.
America's Evil Top Hat.
The America's
Great.
Evil Top Hat, and I had some joke about a cookbook that you also.
Oh, that was amazing.
Thank you.
That was a good.
All right, I've got
You're right.
two.
You're right. That was a great joke.
So
In 10 years.
two in a decade. Ontario is threatening to take away Jordan's psychology license. The Superior Court of Justice ordered Jordan to pay $25,000 to the College of Psychologists and upheld the order that he go through a so-called social media re-education program.
I pity the re-education program.
Can you imagine?
Yeah.
I will not tweet what you want me to tweet.
They've been making this mistake with Jordan from the very beginning. If they had just left him alone, he'd still be like teaching university classes.
Yeah, for people who, believe that the left in America does not want to actively shut down speech, they do. I mean, take a look at Canada. I mean, they want to destroy your life. They really, really do. I was explaining this to somebody, again, a friend of mine who's on the left, and I blew his mind when I explained to him that if it comes down to Trump versus Biden, I will vote for Trump. And it won't really take much to convince me of that, like, at all. And he asked why, and I said, because of this. Because you want to trans my kids, you want to, or at least you want to make it good and proper for the public schools to work to trans my kids. You will attempt to shut me down if I speak freely. And then they'll be like, no, that's not true at all. Well, yes, it is. Yes, it is. I mean, look what they're doing in Canada. Look what they're doing in the UK. The goal here has always been and will always be to make traditional living illegal and make personal sexuality public. That's like the only thing that matters to these folks. So in order apparently to be a licensed psychologist, you have to be fully insane in Canada. You have to actually parrot insanity back to people to be a licensed psychologist in Canada. Honestly, like, Jordan is going to make their lives so miserable.
Yeah, it'll be fun.
It'll be quite fun to watch. Jordan, actually, like I would love to sit in the room watching Jordan take social media re-education training. It would be one of the great experiences of my life. I would pay honest to God money to like be available in that room. I would go get a Canadian bar license to go and be in that room while they try to teach Jordan the things he can and cannot say on Twitter.
I just cannot imagine. This is a man who, as psychology is facing this replication crisis, this whole crisis of identity for the entire field, this man has done more good from the field of psychology than anybody since at least Viktor Frankl and maybe just any psychologist ever. More people come up to me with tears in their eyes. I'm not exaggerating. And they will say, Michael, Jordan Peterson, that man changed my life. And grown men, like serious men. And I think that's the guy that Castro's son goes after?
That's why.
That's why.
Because he's changed their life for the better, and he's made them feel better about being men, and he's made them understand what it means to be a man, and he speaks. The funny thing about Jordan, too, is like, because he can have a harsh, affect on Twitter where he gets so angry at these people because they pick on people who are smaller than them. He hates bullies. But he's the most gracious, kindly person that you could possibly meet. And he genuinely cares about the people who are being stomped on, and that's why they're stomping on him. Why wouldn't they? Why wouldn't they?
By the way, you found the conspiracy theory I do believe in. There's no question that Justin Trudeau is Castro's son. There's no question about
agree.
this.
Yeah,
Zero doubt.
I have started to keep an open mind on this because by some angles he sort of vaguely kind of looks like Pierre.
No.
I'm sorry that you're experiencing astigmatism.
Yeah. Okay, you're right. You're right. He's the son of the Cuban dictator.
By the way, I think what you said is really important, because to me that's the even more dire implication of stories like this. There's the free speech angle, really important, but the fact that this is what the psychology industry has become is people need to understand that. I mean, this is why I'm so skeptical and critical of it fundamentally.
Totally.
And before I would advise any loved one to go see a psychologist, I would be very, very careful, because the entire industry has been totally ideologically captured. I mean, there was a story a few days ago about a child psychologist, prominent one in California somewhere, of course, I think, who was talking about gender, how some children are gender minotaurs, you could be a gender Prius.
Well, they made it illegal to practice actual psychology, right? If a kid comes into you and says, I'm sexually confused, and then you say, well, maybe you ought to wait on that and see how it develops. It's perfectly normal at the age of 14 to be sexually confused. That's a no-no. That's conversion.
And most psychologists have gone along with that completely, with very few exceptions, and the ones that have not gone along with it, like Jordan Peterson.
This is the irony of the so-called conversion therapy. All therapy is, by definition, conversion therapy.
Yes, and why should you not be able to go to somebody and say, I'm gay, I'd like to not be gay, can you possibly help me?
Right.
And explore that. I don't understand that at all.
Right, but if you go to any psychologist, you say, I have a mental problem, I've got some block, can you convince me to think in a different way and behave in a different way? That is a conversion. Every time it's a type of conversion.
There is a strain, and it is a strain under fire, no question about it. There's a strain of Christian psychology that I think can be very useful to people. I think it's useful to people to talk to someone. I think talking to someone who cares about you and doesn't have a stake in your life can be immensely important. But you're absolutely right about this.
I think it can be. It can be useful, but it can also cause more damage than it does
good.
Well,
if the person is incompetent or
evil.
But
I think I'm also critical of just the idea of go to therapy. Everybody's always go to therapy. I think what drives people to go to therapy oftentimes is just that they want to just talk about themselves.
Right.
And they have a lot of fun talking about themselves, and they want to kind of wallow in their own misery, and they want to tell their own story, and all the suffering they've gone through. And it's just that's all they actually want to do.
That's why there's no, as far as I'm aware, no data supporting the idea that simple talk therapy is worthwhile. It has to be combined with cognitive behavioral therapy, right? Which is an actual intervention by the psychologist saying your train of thoughts, for example, you're anxious, and your anxiety is being caused by this train of thoughts. We need to intervene and say, is this train of thoughts logical? Is this correct? Are you actively realizing what you're doing? That's CBT, right? So CBT, actually, there's very good data but that's an interventionist approach to psychology. I don't know when the confirmatory approach to psychology came about, but even Freud rejected that. I mean, what's amazing is that when Freud talks about, for example, polymorphous perversity, right? This idea that there's this human sex drive and that we're truly driven by the sex drive, he then suggests that that's bad. And that the way that you actually end up being a productive human being is you sublimate that in favor of. He does say this. I mean, you sublimate that. Correct. In favor of higher purposes. And the act of maturing is maturing out of treating those desires as primary and sublimating them to higher desires and better things. That's the entire process of growing up. It's only in the 1960s where they say, no. Real authenticity is where you strip away the sublimation. Sublimation is a form of anxiety, and you have to deal with it.
There is an underlying philosophy to Freud, which he didn't intend, but is simply built into the system, where the true reality of you is your basest desires, and everything else is laid on top of that. And that's not always been the case. I mean, if you think of Plato and the chariot analogy, all of our instincts, including our noble instincts, are included in us, and they're part of who we are. And I think that, I have to say, on a more shallow level, I worked with a lot of suicidal people. I've been on hotlines and things like this. 50% of them call up to tell you why they can't be helped. 50% of them do not want to be helped. 50% of them are looking just for somebody to say, you're not awful. And that's not a bad thing. I don't think that's a bad thing. I think that's helpful.
But I think one of the problems with the psychology industry is that the only hope Jordan Peterson is a good psychologist because he's a good philosopher. And it's psychology is not really the idea that it's like medicine or science. It's not exactly.
No.
A good psychologist is someone that has a good idea of what a human being is supposed to be.
Absolutely.
And that's what you go to a psychologist with that question. What am I supposed to be? How am I supposed to think? What ways am I supposed to act? And those are not medical questions. Those are not scientific questions. Those are philosophical questions. The reason why Jordan Peterson is so effective is because he's just a good philosopher. He's got a good sense. He's got wisdom. He's got a good sense of how a person is supposed to be.
You're right about this, because when it comes to medicine, there is an agreed upon standard of what you are trying to achieve. Right? When it comes to medicine, you come in, your leg hurts. The idea is, how do I make it so my leg doesn't hurt and functions properly? But functions properly is well understood. A leg that functions properly lets you go places, supports your weight, all of these sorts of things. When you come in, you say, I as a human am not functioning properly. That requires some explication. What does it mean to function properly as a human? And this is where you get into the philosophy section, right? Because we have millennia of tradition suggesting what it means to be a properly functioning human being. And really, over the course of the last century and a half, we've decided that to be a fully functioning human being means to essentially humor your basest desires That's what it means to be a fully functional human being. And it's really all of these other impositions by society that have prevented you from engaging in the great you that exists internally. And that's where psychology has gone utterly wrong.
That's right. And that is not what the history of philosophy tells us. The history of philosophy has always said that there is an aspect of the human being that knows right from wrong, that can reason to right from wrong, and that can impose restrictions on its basic instincts. And that's built into the human person.
Right, well, psychology never, like modern psychology, never asks, in order to accomplish what? So again, when they say like heal your leg, it's in order to accomplish walking, in order to accomplish carrying. When they say I want to be a whole human, in order to accomplish what? Because what you want to accomplish is going to be a large part of which direction we're actually directing the healing. If you say, I want to be non-anxious, and so I want to be non-anxious so that I can party all night long and drink without worrying about it, then a psychologist theoretically could do that. They could say, you know what, don't worry about anything in your life, get rid of all of your worries, get rid of all of your cares, live off of welfare, and do all those things and you won't be anxious anymore, and your anxiety is healed. But that's not a properly functional human being. The other way to actually deal with the anxiety is to say, you're anxious about some things that are actually real. Let's figure out solutions that allow you to channel that in the most positive possible direction for your flourishing and the flourishing of your family.
Right.
What's amazing, there used to be, in the olden days, before modern people ruined everything, there was a simple answer that old Uncle Aristotle gave us, which is this idea of the four causes. Yeah. We have a formal cause, a material cause, an efficient cause, and a final cause. So the formal, for us, for people, it's the formal cause is the soul, the material is the body, the matter, the efficient is, well, God makes us, and the final cause is, Aristotle would say, happiness, eudaimonia, human flourishing. We Christians would say to know God and to love Him forever and to serve Him here on earth. Modern people say, that's BS, that's a bunch of mumbo-jumbo from a pre-scientific age. Forget about the final cause stuff. Forget about the formal cause. You don't have souls, you don't have any of that. Come on, get out of here. But they don't actually get rid of it. What Aristotle understood is you have to have an answer to that, and the modern people have an answer to that. They say now, instead of the formal cause being the soul, they say, well, man, it's just like my identity, man, it's my whatever. And for the final cause, what do they say? What the implicit final cause today for human beings, that they say, is just to feel good, just to have pleasure. Yeah. And it makes people miserable.
And also, they have forgotten the fact that to do right is the path to feeling better about yourself. To do this.
Well, ironically, as we've gotten rid of death,
as if there were no moral standards.
Well, but in order to understand that, because we become such a healthy, physically people, and we live so long, ironically, our time horizon has disappeared. And so the idea always with eudaimonia or simcha in Hebrew, or any of these words that we're talking about, the idea was over a long period of time, right? The way that you establish whether you are happy is you look back at your life and you look at all the things that you built in the process of building those, and even the things that you're most miserable about in the moment may be the things that make you happiest. There have been a bunch of studies. Roy Baumeister does a lot of really good work on this, and he found that there is a wide differential between what people experience as joy and what people experience as meaning. They're not the same thing at all, and that becomes most apparent, obviously, when it comes to children. When it comes to children, what you experience as joy and what you experience as meaning are very often incredibly disparate. Yeah. Because raising kids, as Matt knows even better than I do because he's got 6, but I've got 4, that's a lot of kids. And it's not always, roses and butterflies. There are a lot of times when it is rough. It is very difficult. I mean, last night when you're up in the middle of the night, 3 to 5 in the morning because your baby has too much snot and you're like sucking the snot out of the baby's nose so the baby can breathe. Is that joy? No, but that's meaning. Yeah. And that meaning is what leads to happiness. But that requires a time horizon. Because in order
you also just corrected something. I misspoke when I said the efficient cause is God. The efficient cause for our creation is our parents, is our family. Mm-hmm. That's the other thing that they totally deny, and they deny the truths that you're just explaining.
And there's also a distinction between joy and happiness. I mean, happy, you win the lottery, you're happy for a day or whatever, and then you become miserable because you have money that you didn't earn. But joy is something you can experience even in grief, even in crisis. And you're right, it's totally connected to meaning, it's totally connected to fulfilling who you are as a human being.
It's iterations over time. It has to do with iterations over time. As the time horizon goes away.
Well, because in the moment you're struggling, you're stressed out and all that stuff. But the joy can be there even in those moments because you understand that this is what you're here for. I mean, to suck the snot out of your baby's nose when that's why you're here. That is, and that purpose does. I mean, I can say this because I'm now at the end of life. You do look back and say, like, that was great. I'm so glad that happened.
The member exclusive portion of our show continues now at dailywire.com. If you are not a member, if you're just one of those freeloading hoi polloi watching now on one of these despicable social networks, head on over, click the link in the description, subscribe right now. We will see you there.
You guys, that was such an interesting one from the backstage of Daily Wire. This is the first time I'm ever reacting to them sit down like this and talk. It was so interesting. I enjoyed every minute that this lasted. And as for Jordan Peterson, what do you guys think about Ontario's ruling? Do you guys the ruling was too harsh, or it was just fair? Let me know your thoughts on this one. I really had fun reacting to this video. If you guys totally enjoyed watching, give it a massive thumbs up, comment, share, and all that good stuff. And this is me officially signing out. I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye guys.